Now, but what she noticed was every time she did that, the kids ended up in some sort of dysregulated mode by the end of the trip.
Really?
Yes. Whereas...
Welcome to Classical Etc. You're in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Gardner, and I am here today with Paul, Tanya, and Martin. And it is so good to have everybody back. It has been a couple weeks. Martin, you've been traveling?
I have.
Conferences? Speaking at conferences?
Yes. Yeah,
Sounds like you're tired.
He just got up.
No, I've been dealing with the people who deliver appliances when they can't get them in the door.
Oh, no. Well, then you ordered an appliance that's too big.
No, the door is going to be widened.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Now, what did you ask me?
Important of an appliance?
Washers and dryers. Yeah,
Okay.
I do like clean clothes. That's one thing that I really need.
Dave closed in half a garage once with a deep freeze in it, and our neighbor came over and said, "So how are you going to get that out of there?" Oh, no.
No, my wife needs to have the appliances she wants.
Yes.
And so
Appliances have gotten bigger.
They have.
In your defense,
yeah.
I
Yes.
have a hole where my refrigerator goes, and I went and bought a standard new refrigerator. And when it went in, it scraped they had to take the chair rail off, and it was awful. And I ended up remodeling my kitchen to move the refrigerator so I could put Paul's pork sausage in the freezer.
Oh, you got a bigger one?
Well, not since I bought the
Oh.
sausage, but I did end up really remodeling my kitchen because the refrigerators that they make now, I would have had to get a dorm fridge or a regular fridge. And I needed a regular fridge because I bought a lot of sausage.
And just to be clear, if my wife ever watches this episode, she actually did the work. I was trying to get stuff done, job stuff done, and she was actually taking the molding off, and so. But I cheered her on, and I gave advice. And so I was in Atlanta for the big one of the big school classical education conferences, and then in California at the homeschool conference in California. So.
Yeah.
On the road.
Been busy.
Yeah. On tour. On tour. Martin on tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
Martin on tour. Well, today we are discussing attention spans and what you can do to improve yours. Because if you're anything like me, maybe some of us, you have noticed that it has shortened over time. But before we get to that, what we are reading, Martin, have you had time to do any reading?
I don't remember.
Oh, surely on airplanes.
Yes. What am I reading?
You really can't remember.
Oh, okay. I tell you what I'm reading. I'm reading a really good book. It's a philosophy book. So, but it's very readable by Daniel McInerney, called Beauty and Imitation. Peter Kraft said this was the best book he had read on the issue of beauty and aesthetics. And the whole first part is about literature. And he talks a lot about Flannery O'Connor. And some of the quotes, I just die laughing because O'Connor just got this funny sense of humor. But it's about, the four senses of reading from ultimately going back to Paul, but widely discussed in the Middle Ages. And it was that Paul uses on Scripture itself, the Apostle Paul. But yeah, it's really fabulous. And I'm going to be nominating that for our Parnassus Prize for next year. So
What's the title one more time?
it's called Beauty and Imitation. I can't remember the subhead, by Daniel McInerney. Yeah, very good. Excellent book.
Tanya? I know you're busy with conference planning.
Yes, but I don't let it get in the way of my reading. At least my 20 minutes in the morning. I'm still reading Great Expectations. I just finished volume 2, and I had said that I thought David Copperfield, that I was enjoying it less than David Copperfield, but I just got at the end of volume 2 to this. I understand now. I still have another volume to go, but I really do understand why this book is brilliant. but I had to get there to that point. I had suspected, but I had suspected what just happened, but now that it's been proven correct, it really is a brilliant, it's like, I feel like it's like A Tale of Two Cities, brilliant, that shocker at the end. This was a shocker 2/3 of the way through the book, but it's not really a shocker. You kind of anticipate it, but it just makes it, I don't want to say too much for anybody that hasn't read it, because that was really the fun part of it, was actually getting to that and seeing what was going to happen. So I do.
This is the two hardest Dickens books for me to read have been the two most popular ones and probably most mentioned one, David Copperfield and Tale of Two Cities. I really like the Tale of Two Cities, particularly the end. But Dickens books can be a hard slog for a good part of good first part of the book. And both those, to me, and even David Copperfield, there was so many depressing things for so long.
There were, but I felt like his character was always very interesting and well developed in a way that Pip's, I haven't felt like yet. He's just not the heroic character at this point. I think that's coming. I'm sure it's coming. But this twist is just beautiful. Beautifully done.
I agree with Martin partially in that. I mean, I agree. Dickens is a slog. And for whatever reason, Tale of Two Cities and A Christmas Carol have always stood out to me to be different.
They are different
than the rest. And so I enjoy both of those, but I can't remember the last one I tried to read with you all.
Was it Little Dorrit? Did we read Little Dorrit?
No.
I love that story. I love Little Dorrit.
We did read one, but I can't remember
what it was, and I didn't get all the way through it. Was it Hard Times?
Maybe, but you should read that. It's about progressive education.
That's a shorter one, and to me, that gets right into it. I don't have to wait there.
Yes, it is a shorter Dickens.
Yeah, shorter Dickens.
I mean, for Dickens.
It's really not that long. But I love Dombey and Son. It's my wife's favorite.
Bleak
you said
House.
that, so I got that on Audible, and
that one is a slog at the beginning, but it is absolutely worth it.
There's so many characters and there's so much dialect. I think it is very difficult to get into Dickens, but it is absolutely worth it. And this Great Expectations, which I know is, everybody says, have you read Great Expectations? It is one of the ones that people really revere. Mm-hmm. And I started it and thought, I just don't know, but now I get it.
It's good.
Can't judge a book before you finish it. And I'm not finished yet. It could still disappoint me.
Well, it seems like every time we get into because I'm one of the talks on the campaign.
Oh, Martin, are you running for office? Is that where you've been?
Let me figure out what office I'd like to run for, and then I'll announce it. But on the conference trail, Andrew Pudua and I have been doing a talk on literature. And last time we finished, I thought all except for one or two of the books on this list are really long.
Yeah, I feel like I read a lot of long.
Yeah, and Kristen Lavren's daughter, and there's all, and I was going to tell him, maybe for next year we could do some shorter books, people could get into a little easier.
Yeah.
Paul, how about you?
Well, the other night I pulled out Shop Class's Soulcraft again and got about 3 words read before I got interrupted. And so that didn't go very well.
Have you read it before?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
I thought you said pick up again. I thought.
Oh, no, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when you weren't here that I had started it. And so I'm trying to make my way through it. And then I picked up again, because I mentioned this a couple months ago, Life at the Bottom. And that one's always fascinating to me.
Who wrote that?
Somebody. I don't know.
Okay, clearly not AI. That narrows it down.
But I listened. That one I listened to in the car, and it's a British doctor that worked or works. I'm not sure, in a lower end hospital, and just his observations about how people that are not well to do live and the decisions they make and why they make those decisions. And
Life at the Bottom.
Life at the Bottom.
That sounds good. Is it a good reader?
Yes. Yeah. The narrator's good, and it's a British guy, so it fits, it's, but it's a collection of essays. So there's one essay on tattoos, and like, what does this say? And why do they do this? Why do they say they do this? And there's, a whole slew of other ones, like just a whole bunch of different, one was about grammar, how they talk, where like almost every sentence is a denial of responsibility. Like that happened to me instead of I chose to do this sort of thing that he's just over 30 years of working with the population observes. And that's kind of chronic.
That sounds good.
It is interesting.
Well, on to today's topic, the modern attention span. And in today's world, there are so many threats to deep concentration, whether it's reading or extended times of work or creative activities. I'm sure we've all felt that. And several different things kind of sparked this conversation today. But one of them was an article by our friend and colleague, Professor Carroll. Paul, do you mind to just kind of sum up that article for us?
Yes, it's really funny because Tanya was one that read it and then sent it around and said, read this. And now she couldn't even remember it.
Listen, I am heavy into conference prep.
Yeah, her attention span has been a little.
Oh my attention span is gone.
Professor Carroll was talking about how she was in an airport and she found this kiosk where you could say you wanted a story that was a minute read or a 3-minute read or a 5-minute read, and this idea was intriguing to her. I mean, she thought it was a great idea. But then when she, and they would print out kind of like, I got the impression on like almost like a receipt printer.
Right. Like a CVS receipt.
Yeah. And so she got,
she got
several,
one of each,
I think of varying lengths, and then sat down to read them and realized that it really wasn't good literature that she was reading. It wasn't, and so she kind of, I think she had kind of a twofold problem with it. One, which was, wow, we can really we really need stories that are a 1-minute read because that's all.
Like there's really a market for this.
Yeah. And then the second one was, why this quality of output? And so, yeah, I mean, I think we harp all the time about you need to be reading good things. And so that obviously resonates with us.
Yeah. And it's curious to me that anyone would think that the solution to the problem of reading would be to decrease the quantity and the quality of it.
Right. I mean, yeah, I maybe this is something that just anybody can publish. Anybody can just put their 3 minutes in and then it's available for people to actually, did they have to purchase it?
I don't
or just,
think so.
It's just free.
I think
it's
it was
just
like
free?
a nonprofit that was.
Okay. So you're basically self-publishing 3 minutes worth of your prose.
Yeah, you could. I went to the website for the company and you can upload your submissions and they're listed in all kinds of different categories. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Ooh, if you want to become a published author.
That's right. I was recently at Princeton for a conference, and we talked to. This was actually last year. It wasn't. I was there recently, but it wasn't. It was last year, and we talked to the head of the chair of the religion department there, and she was saying that her students no longer can read large assignments at one time, that they just melt down, that they even emotionally fall apart. So she has to assign smaller and smaller loads of reading for their work, and everything has to be shorter and smaller. And that terrified me. I thought, I mean, when I was in college, there was so much reading you couldn't. Of course, I majored in English. It was hard to get it done. And the thought that now students aren't being asked to continue to do that, I found it just, especially someplace like Princeton. I found it unbelievable and really scary.
Well, and clearly the solution to this, to the problem of people not being able to read longer things, is not to assign them even shorter things.
Right.
There may be a solution out there, but that's not it.
I think you're absolutely right on that. I mean, it seems
Look at them agreeing.
that
World peace.
that's a very common sense observation, and yet
You seem so shocked that he made it.
I'm not shocked that Martin would make a common sense observation, but no, I think it probably strikes a nerve because I see this with our kids in the public school, the foster kids in public school, just like, well, this is all they can do. Well, they're not going to be able to do more unless you ask them to do more,
Right.
But the thing that's been going through my head is even like the ability to sit and watch a movie that are intended to drag you in. And the amount of times that we've tried to do a family movie and 15 minutes later, they want to get all up in my face and jump around and be talking to me. And I said, I am watching the movie. And this has been designed to keep you engaged. Actually, well, we were watching Sound of Music. It's older. It's not that flashy stuff. But even the flashy ones, watching The Incredibles and, halfway through, I want to go do something else.
Wow.
And it's not just books.
No.
If you have someone who likes to eat, you don't solve it by feeding him mere spoonfuls of gruel. Low quality, low quantity. That's not the answer. The answer to
Wait, somebody likes to eat?
somebody doesn't like to eat.
Doesn't
you
like
said
to eat.
does like to
Then
eat.
let's feed him something that tastes worse and give him less of it. That'll solve the problem. And really, when you're talking about, because there's two questions here. One is what's the solution to it? But in order to find that out, you have to first ask the question, what's the cause of it? I think I know definitely what the cause of it is.
What do you think?
It's smartphones.
I agree.
Technology.
I
Absolutely
totally
smartphones.
agree.
So not technology generally, like computers, but
I would
phones.
I
say
think
it's
that
general.
that doesn't
It's
do
all
us
part
a
of
lot
it.
of good.
But if you look at something like Facebook or Instagram or
TikTok,
whatever they are,
in particular,
you can do so much in half an hour. You're looking at so many different things. They're very short, boom, boom, boom. But when you get finished, you really don't have anything. And your attention span has literally only had to be, I'm going to read 2 sentences that this person wrote in 2 sentences. I mean, it's like the airport 2 minutes of reading, and you haven't you're not exercising your brain at all.
Yeah, you know what? It's actually an interesting observation that when I first started using social media as an adult, right? I mean, I'm old enough now to actually, but I rarely looked at the comments, right? I would look at what the original post was, but I
Right.
rarely would dig into the comments. And now, and then my wife would talk about how she saw this comment, blah, 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 blah. And I started thinking, well, I need to check the comments. And so now, like on a given post, I might spend 5 or 10 minutes because
You're reading the comments?
I'm reading the comments, which is about whatever that, if it's some passing thing, right? I'm not going to do that. But most of what I'm looking at on social media is, farmers that are similar to me saying, how do I solve this problem? And then I dig into that problem with saying, okay, this person said this person said this, trying to sort of, in my mind, bring all of that together into, okay, probably what are the majority of people here saying?
Well, but that's actually learning something.
Well, it is.
You're talking about learning something.
And
I'm talking
I've
about.
learned how to use it differently is what I'm
Right.
saying. But what's
how do you-
actually infuriated me now is like Facebook now only shows top comments, not all comments.
Oh.
And so I have to, when I'm trying to figure out one of these issues, it's auto selecting for me
the ones that it thinks,
what it thinks
it
I need
wants
to
you to see.
And I'm like, no, I want to see all of them and spend my time reading so I can figure out what actually is the best.
Instead of moving on to the next quick thing. But they may do that because they know that people aren't going to do all of that reading because they.
Yeah, and Twitter does a similar thing in that you can have this setting and you can change it. But one is where you just get the chronological last thing that came in, or you can get the one that is, designed by them for you, and it keeps defaulting to that. So you have to change it back to the regular setting.
Well, and
absolutely.
Martin, you just showed your age because it is now X.
That's right.
Oh, I just didn't know that.
You weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But it's Plato's cave with the prisoners watching ever shorter plays of the shadows on the wall. That's really what it is. Not only are they ignorant of real things because the real things are outside the cave in the sun, but the stuff that they're showing the poor prisoners down there is just shorter and shorter all the time. And I Jonathan Haidt has written a book about this, and I you couldn't read it before the show, but he's talking about this very problem, and it's smartphones in large part. And if you don't just my grandkids, none of them do phones, and they have very long attention spans. That's the thing that I noticed most about my grandchildren is you can sit there and read they will sit there for as long as you have the energy as a grandparent to read the story. Or my grandson, I may have mentioned this here before, but my grandson was helping me build some bookshelves in a basement room. And we were there for fully 3 hours. And he was disappointed that we had to stop. So, I think it can be solved. It can be solved, and the solution's fairly clear.
Well, and I think also silence.
Yeah.
Silence is important.
Yes.
If you have to sit through an hour-long church service, that's good practice right there.
It is good practice.
And a quiet one.
Yeah.
Because if all the time you're constantly being flooded with something, whether it's through your eyes, through your ears, something, then you're constantly called to something else. And it's fascinating.
Well, even if you just go to a restaurant, there are TVs on every wall. Every one of them's on a different station, and there's background music playing that's so loud you can't have a conversation.
Yeah. I was at a hotel where several hotels, but just recently another one, California, where there's music coming out of the bushes. There must be a real tiny, small little band in there playing. It's like, can I not escape that even here?
Right. And even outside.
Yeah. And at the hotel for one of the Florida conferences we go to, there's the old people's pool, and there's no music coming out of the bushes for the old people. They can't hear anyway, apparently, but I say that as a senior citizen myself.
Yes.
Lest I
you did.
Just insulted a bunch of
audience. Martin, just go to the old people's pool and you'll have your silence.
That's what I do.
It's hard to find silence these days.
Yeah. And maybe that's a good segue to positive things that we can do. We know maybe some things we should stop doing, and maybe we should stop maybe spending less time with whatever technology might be in front of us, whether you have social media or not. There are a lot of avenues even beyond that
I'd like to see people take the time that they spend on their phones reading and actually put that amount of time into a book. It could be 20 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, but just try it for a month. And you could get a lot read. But the other thing is, if you haven't been reading, then don't start with War and Peace. Don't start with Anna Karenina. Start with even a children's book. A good children's book. Use our lists. Because I do think that there's no technology in our classrooms at all, and so our students are reading, listening to adults talk, taking notes. All of those things are engaging them to think, and it is quiet. And so they are, I do think it's training of your brain. And I find if I'm reading something, if I read several books that are like the British murder mysteries that I love, the next time I pick up a really good book of great quality, then it does take me, I'm a little bit slower. I literally feel myself having to slow down to read. I can't some books, especially modern books, I can read them so fast. They're in my language. They're in the way that we speak today. But if I pick up a book like Dickens we were talking about earlier, it's not. And I literally have to slow down and read much more contemplatively. And I think that's a good thing, but it's not really the place to start if you haven't been reading, because then you'll just quit.
Yeah. The irony though is I know people who were not readers, and they'll pick up some long thing, and I'll be thinking, no, don't do
Because
that.
they're trying, like, I'm going to try that. I'm going to better myself.
I'm going to
be a lifelong learner.
Right. I'm going to read Tolstoy or something. You know,
Right.
And then they'll finish it, and it will have utterly changed their life. You know, they've never read anything like this. And so it does happen, but really, you know, like if you lift weights or something, you know, you exercise, what do? You start out small in shorter spurts with less weight if you're doing weights, and you slowly increase it. It's an adaptation. And with reading also, it's a habit that you want to form.
It is a habit.
Reading needs to be a habit. If it is not, and habits help you in the sense that you don't have to try so hard anymore. If you can develop this, it's hard to develop the habit. That involves a lot of effort. But once you have acquired the habit, then it's not so hard anymore. And I think people need to hear that, because they think, well, it's always going to be this hard for me to do this. It's always going to be hard for me to. No,
it's not.
You
That's
need to
right.
get used to it. You need to adapt to it. You need to progressively read longer things, maybe even higher quality in terms of the depth of them. But there will come a time, and every reader, unless you know they were like this since children, and many of us weren't, you'll realize that it's not always going to be this hard, and that's should be an encouragement to people. Who
Martin,
can't
do you
this.
remember what your son said to Phil? We had in our discussion group, we were having a discussion night, and Phil was an engineer and not of the same, literary group as the rest of us. And at one point, Timmy turns to Phil and goes, "Phil, you're the best read engineer I've ever met." And it was like it was a compliment and a insult at the same time.
Right.
But it's actually fascinating because, talking to Phil over the years, like he didn't read that kind of stuff until he started to come to our group. And, and that really, I mean, he would read engineering stuff. I guess that exists, and theology, but he didn't read anything literary, didn't read anything philosophical.
Fiction, probably.
Right. And then he started coming to our group. He started reading all of this stuff. And, over the years, he just keeps reading more and more of it. And, he would have told himself, I'm an engineer by trade. I'm a theologian by, he spent some time missionary out of the country, right? Like by desire, really, but I don't read fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment so that goes back to Martin's point, because I think he picked up one of these Russian novels because he was at a night where we were all talking about different Russian novels, and he picks up one of these. He goes, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" Once he got through it, and so I think as adults, right, when we're talking, we need these longer attention spans. Generally speaking, as an adult, if you've trained yourself in some kind of ability to focus, then you can turn that ability to something, right? But the real
More
question, I think, is for the kids, right? We're now probably out, kids are probably growing up with never having created that skill of being able to focus on anything without at least some external help. Like maybe they can sit there and play video games for three hours, but that's because it's constantly changing,
Right.
And it's kind of designed with their brains in mind, we could say.
Yeah. But I mean, I think with kids, you have to give them that one thing, whether it's reading or whatever it is, and start small. Like you were talking about, like what Tanya, you were advocating for adults, right? Start with the easy.
I was, but we do the
but
same
for
thing in the
kids,
classroom, right?
Start with something that they can accomplish,
Yes.
and
that they're interested in,
right? And back to Martin's point at the beginning that I was so shocked by, just constantly make that longer and longer. Right. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be constantly a challenge because it's going to constantly get longer.
Because it is a discipline, but it is also the way that eventually you're going to want to know what happened in the story. If you read enough, you're eventually going to be actually interested in it. And you should choose something that you are interested in anyway to get started. It's hard to read a book if you're not interested in the
It is, but,
characters.
if you fly, you see this all the time where parents have given their kids some little play
Tablet.
device or something, that little tablet thing, and they're sitting there just getting the dopamine hits. Just was what, and I think how much better they don't understand. The parents don't understand what is happening because they did not grow up with this.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't seen the societal effects of this.
I don't think we have seen
I don't
the
know. I don't think
societal
we
effects
have.
yet,
I
but
don't
we are
think we
going
have.
to. I do believe that.
And then
We
those
sound
of
like
us-
Luddites.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
We are.
but all of us sit at a computer all day long.
Yeah, right.
which is ironic,
do.
right? But we can focus on it, right? Like that's one thing. But speaking about parents giving tablets to kids while they're traveling,
How about in the classroom?
Yeah, I was just going to
Well,
ask you though,
hold
because
on. I was gonna-
HLS doesn't do technology.
No.
no, I was going to stay on the traveling portion for just a
sorry.
second
Okay.
before y'all get to the classroom.
Can we all listen to Paul, please?
But
Sure.
my wife Sarah just made this observation with these two girls. Was, they came to us with an iPad, and I had an old iPad because they were fighting over it, and so occasionally we'll give it to them. But we're constantly making 30-minute trips, whether it's into Louisville or something, right? Anywhere from Shelbyville is 30 minutes,
Right.
And so one day Sarah just wasn't willing to. I mean, we just were like, okay, we're just going to give them tablets while we're in
There
the
are
car.
desperate moments.
Now, but what she noticed was every time she did that, the kids ended up in some sort of dysregulated mode by the end of the trip.
Really?
Yes. Whereas if they didn't have the tablets, and whether it was, conversations, them playing, or when they were playing and we could hear it going wrong, okay, we're going to put on like a piece of music or something they would end up being regulated. But it was the moment that you just gave them this, just to, as you say, get those dopamine hits. The moment they stop getting those dopamine hits is the moment that everything breaks down.
Right.
And so it's very interesting that what we think we are giving them something to keep them content, and we're
Discontenting them.
We're discontenting them and shortening their attention spans.
Right.
All in the same.
Yeah.
So now we can go back to the classroom.
Yeah, you give them the thing that is supposed to content them, but you not only make them discontented after you take it away, you've ruined their ability to be content in other areas of life.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that there's two questions here. What do you do about a child who has been acclimated to this kind of thing? My recommendation is to simply cold turkey.
Whoa.
Just
Cold turkey.
just get it over with as soon as possible.
Yeah. Just put it up.
Put it up. And then if you have young kids, just read to them books. Be totally low tech. I mean, they'll watch TV every now and then. Mostly like when we come over, we'll watch a Wallace and Gromit or something that everybody can enjoy. But very, very seldom, maybe once a week. So, and the ironic thing is that doing it that way and giving them technology so seldom will make them enjoy it more when they do it.
The treat.
Oh,
Well,
it does become a treat.
Yeah, I have seen that kids that have no access to it, the moment, say, like cousins that do have access to it, come to visit and there's technology available, the ones that don't have access to it are just glued like fireflies.
Yes,
Yes, that's true.
That's
Oh,
true.
interesting.
So that's just something you got to watch.
But that's
and as they
that's-
grow, they mature, then they'll
But that's
grow out of that.
in a way, that's another benefit to it. Is that conversely, the kid who doesn't have that kind of thing, if you put on some, old movie, or our kids have all seen one of the first Winnie the Pooh thing that Disney did, they'll enjoy it even more than if they had seen all this other stuff that is of lesser quality.
Maybe The Sound of Music.
Yes, that took us. Wait, no, we haven't finished it. We've sat down and watched it twice. We've gotten through like 2 of the 3 hours.
Oh, well, that's
And
good
so we
though.
need to finish
That's good.
the
I mean,
third
they're
one.
young.
Yeah,
They're
are
young for The Sound of Music.
But also, I mean, this is where cross pollination is. It was so amazing because I never would have said, let's sit down and watch Sound of Music, right? But my sister brought her kids up from Georgia, and her daughter was singing the "I'm 16 going on 17" song, and so our foster daughter picked that up, kept singing. I was like, where did you hear that? I was, oh, well, Izzy was singing that. And I was like, well, it comes from a movie. And so then we start prepping her for, okay, we're going to go watch this movie. And thankfully that song happens fairly early on.
And we did The Sound of Music here. Our Highlands Latin School drama troupe did that. I don't know if any of you went.
I did. And I did.
And I went with my whole family came. And all the kids, because this was long. This was like 2.5 hours.
I heard it was the full production, 2.5 to 3 hours, more likely 3.
Yes. Yeah. And my 2-year-old grandson was in my lap, who was raised without smartphones. He watched the entire thing and almost leaped out of my lap in one scene. But a 2-year-old you can't even understand, but he's hearing the music. He's seeing the things that are going on stage. He doesn't completely understand it. And he still was fixated for 2.5 hours. I mean, this is possible. People don't realize this is possible.
But we are all even as adults, we are so busy. It's I have to literally, I love to read. It's one of my favorite things, but I really have to force myself to find that half an hour every day because I'm busy and we've got so much going on and we're in the car all the time. We're not living, at least people living in the city are not living quiet rural lives where you go for long walks and sit and read on the front porch.
Yeah, I think, Tanya, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing is last night, the older girl told me, she said, I think I know where you're tired in the mornings. It's because you stay up so late after we go to bed. And I was like, I only stay up because I have so much to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, your point is absolutely valid. We're so busy.
And I don't know what we do about that. What do we drop?
Well, and on that point,
Martin doesn't come to work anymore, so he's on the campaign trail.
I'm prepping for reading on my porch, prepping for my classes,
he's on his
and my conference
reading.
article of a speech. But I think it is really important to find a place that's a regular. I mean, you used to talk about going into your sunroom. I thought in the early morning.
Right now I'm on this greened in porch.
Oh yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah, but yes,
but find a place that is quiet and you are not distracted,
and a consistent time
at a consistent time of the day, and it could be preferably really outside as long as it's quiet. We have quiet neighborhoods, and I have my front porch, and that's the only place I can read because I'm easily distracted, more so than probably I've ever been. So I have to have a quieter place to do things like that. But I mean, when we bought our house that we bought late last year, I walked in and the primary thing for me was, where in this house would I be comfortable sitting in some kind of solitude and reading? And I identified 2 places outside and 1 place inside. And I ended up with 4 because of my office now is a nice place to think and do stuff. So yeah, a place and a time. And it's, right now, afternoons on the porch are the best time for me to read. So I try to maximize as much as I can.
We're at work in the afternoons.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Yeah. Well, I'm mostly at work in my office even then because I have too much to do, but you do have to.
That's the thing that
my best place to read is in Tanya's office in the afternoons.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, maybe we could just all go in there and.
I'm just trying to get him to finish that philosophy course.
One day.
I don't think you're even working on it. That stack of books has not moved.
I brought the stack of books down. That was step 1.
You brought them down. Yeah, he brought them downstairs.
And then I was going to be doing Vegan's book because we had a deadline that got postponed. So I do need to get on that philosophy now.
Paul's got some to-dos.
I do have some to-dos.
So it sounds like if we're picturing parents in a homeschool setting or teachers in a classroom, there are some things that they can even, 1, eliminate, and 2, add in to really make the process of expanding a student's attention span or even kind of exposing them to things that would expand their attention span, that's doable.
Oh, it's so easy.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
just read with them.
Right.
And that's going to take care of it.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that every student's going to say in the third grade, I love to read, because they're not.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but they still have to keep reading because it's in their curriculum, and you have to keep reading to them. And at that point, it just needs to be something they're interested in. But somebody recently told me, it was the parent, somebody who works here, who's the parent of one of our students, said that his son, he really struggled to get his son to read in the summer because he wants to be out all the time. But his scooter broke and they bought him a new scooter. But he couldn't get it until he had picked up a Hardy Boys book, and he had just read like 10 pages or something. And never would pick it back up. So he said, when you finish that first book, then I'm going to give you your new scooter. And so he literally read that book all the next day until he finished it. But he also got interested in it. He wanted to know what happened, but he just hadn't given it a chance. And so, that's what we do when we force students to read, but we are also engaged with them. We have a teacher here who's reading everything alongside her children who are students here, and conversing with them, and really, really involved in a way that she doesn't have to be. But it's helpful to her and it's helpful to them because they know that this is important.
Well, and when you do that, because I think that experience really changed my life, because in 4th and 5th grade, we were read Charlotte's Web, and it wasn't any part of the program. The teacher just read a chapter every class, and Little House on the Prairie. We read the first 1 or 2 of those books. And when summer came around, we wore my mother out to take us to the library so that we could get the other books and read them. So it's if you're reading for 20 minutes, half an hour, that's training an attention span right there. And it's also showing them that there are really great things in books. So I think reading aloud, and I do it with my grandchildren now, and did it with our children, is one of the absolute most important things that you can do.
And when I was teaching 5th and 6th grade, so 10, 11, 12-year-olds, I would read every day 10 minutes before lunch, 10 minutes. We would read a read aloud book, which was about a chapter in whatever read aloud book we were reading. But they really were glued to that. And that was to them. What I was doing was giving them elevated reading and good story, but to them, they felt like they weren't doing schoolwork. So it was that added, I could literally use that as a threat. Like, we're not going to have, if you don't behave in math, if you don't get this math work done, then we're going to lose that time. And that to them, it was like a treat to them. And so it was like they don't think of it as school. It really is like a break.
Yeah. And when you have a book you want to read, I remember that one of the ways to be rebellious as a kid was hiding under the covers at night with a flashlight reading a book, right?
Because you were supposed to be sleeping.
That's right.
Yeah. But I had a book to read, I'm not going to go to sleep. I need to know what happens, and
I used to do that with Nancy Drew, and it would scare me to death. I'd scare myself to death.
Is that where your love of mystery started?
It did. It started with Nancy Drew. It did.
I read all of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys when I was a kid.
I didn't read the Hardy Boys, but my brother did. And for some reason, I should have read them too. I probably would have liked them.
It's same thing, just
boys
instead of girls. But yeah, and my mother was constantly, I had shelves of books, which, I had them when I was a kid, and then I was going digital, and I've gone back to shelves of books now.
That's right.
But
he's come back to the bright side, or what do you call that? There's the dark side and the
light side,
the Jedi side. I don't know.
If we're going Star Wars, yes. But just as a kid, I could go and pick anything I wanted to read because what was in the house was good,
right?
And I'd be like, "Ooh, that looks good," and I'll read that.
Yeah.
Well, and you could give them incentives, and Or my oldest grandson, he's all about organization. He wants to organize my library. I'm thinking, well, then I won't know where everything is. But so I put him on this little thing. I gave him a chart with the books that I want him to read. And I said, I want a 1 to 5 rating on each one of these. Well, he's all over that. That's right. That just appeals to his personality. And so he's going to read all these books because he's got to fill out this chart that propagates.
You didn't organize your library.
Yeah, just to keep him away from my library.
Oh, but that is a creative idea. And it's interesting how like creating those enriching experiences for kids that are a different but better path than some of the other things before them.
Yes.
Can really, add to your relationships and give them something to do.
Well, yeah. And, and the other thing is, sharing with them the books that you liked when you were a child.
Mm-hmm.
I just gave him what was my favorite science fiction book when I was in junior high school. And he's all over that. They're going on a road trip, and he's took the book and another book I gave him, and he'll have both those read by the time he gets back.
Yeah, that's
Because he has no screens.
That's right.
And no choice.
No choice.
That's right.
Oh. Well, great discussion today, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We will be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.